What is up, everybody? It is Alex from Heavy New York calling from the quarantine zone again, and this time we are here with Jimmy and Kris of Dear Desolate. Great to be able to talk with you guys today. Thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having us.
Good
Yeah,
to be here.
yeah, it's so awesome to have you here. So, Jimmy, congratulations on the new gig, and starting the gig off on a high note. You released the single Voyager, which features both you and AJ of Fire from the Gods, a great friend of ours, and have interviewed him multiple times. Um, Being that this is, obviously this is a collaboration single, but musically, could this also serve as a clear representation on the direction that Dear Desolate is going into from here on out?
Yeah, one thing that they brought up to me when they first reached out to me to be in the band, they're like, "Hey, do you want to be the singer?" I'm like, "That's not really, my style. Like the older material, that's not what I was very comfortable with." And they said, "No, no, no, no. Like we're kind of going in a new direction here. We're kind of leaning away towards the more I don't want to say radio friendly, but almost in a sense radio friendly, just something that will appear to a larger audience." And I was like, yeah, okay, cool. So, and we kind of ran with that, and um, that seems to be a good indicator of what the rest of the songs we put out are going to be.
Which is fascinating. And Kris, being that you've been in the band now for a little bit longer, and you've put out other singles such as Sweet Tooth and Fracture and a lot of other singles. Were you kind of like adjusting your playing style a little bit more and stepped into more uncharted territory as a drummer?
Yeah, I think we were with our older singles, like especially Fracture. I think that was like a huge stepping stone for us to be able to get into this new style that we're in right now, and that we're have a trajectory towards, if that makes sense. So like a lot of our older stuff, I mean, even before I was in the band, I mean, it's just like super heavy. And when I got in, I was like, all of our styles kind of meshed together, and we kind of started. It's more of a melting pot at that point, of the different styles. And I think the new additions in the band are just making this sound more refined and better as we grow older,
Yeah.
and write new music.
So do you think that like you kind of want to pursue a new path and kind of like stick with a more quote unquote radio friendly sound in a way, or can you see maybe Dear Desolate also exploring some heavier materials? Because there's a lot of bands that have a very radio friendly side to them. Five Finger Death Punch is a great example of that. Killswitch Engage is a great example of that. All That Remains, like they have very very heavy songs, but also very melodic, more radio friendly songs. So do you think you could maybe see yourself experimenting even further and bringing in multiple sides to Dear Desolate?
Yeah, I think so. I mean, so like my big inspiration when I was growing up, I was a huge Slipknot fan, still am. And I think Subliminal Verses, or the Volume 3 album, I think that's yeah. So it's got like so much different styles packed into one album. You know what I mean? They've got Vermilion Part 2, and then they've got super heavy stuff. I think I'm talking about the right album. I just woke up, so excuse me if it's the incorrect one. But, that was just like, that to me was like super eye-opening as I got older. I was like, man, we are so versatile and versatile in what we can do when it comes to writing music. We can do the heavy stuff. That's like bread and butter to us back then, right? So it's like this newer style of like the hard rock, more radio friendly. Since we have Jimmy, his voice, it's so much easier for us to write the huge choruses in it, right? And then we can still do some heavy stuff as well. So I think, I think we can still do the heavy stuff, but at the same time keep the radio market as well.
Jimmy, were you kind of like looking at the earlier material, being like, okay, this is how I have to sing, or like did you have to maybe adjust your vocal performance to an extent, or were you fully allowed to just bring in your own mix into Dear Desolate and kind of show them new ideas as well?
So when Squid, our guitar player, when he initially hit me up and he asked me, I told him, because I listened to the material before I responded. I went to their Spotify and I was like, dude, I can't really, that's not real. I've never like delved into that style of vocals before. And I told him like, that's not really my thing. And he said, no, take a step back. And he showed me Voyager, because they had that demoed out at the time. And I was like, okay, this is something I could get behind. And I eventually went down to North Carolina for the first time and met all of them, and we worked on a bunch of songs together, and they just told me, just do what you do best. Whatever caters to your voice, do that. They made sure that they weren't, because ultimately when you're getting a new vocalist, you want to utilize that vocalist for what they do best. And they really made sure that I was comfortable with doing what was comfortable for me and my voice, and because ultimately that's what, how I know that I'm going to get the best results out of myself is when I enjoy doing the kind of vocals that, I like doing.
Yeah, and maybe collaborating with AJ of Fire from the Gods, which is another great example of a band that's able to kind of like fluctuate in their heaviness in a way that maybe have had to open your mind up to singing as well, right? When you sing with another individual, I mean, there's just so many new tricks and twists that you could learn.
So I actually wasn't there when AJ was. That was still before I was even a thing. Yeah, they worked on that. Everything was all tracked out, and that's when they sent it to me. I was like, okay, this is cool.
So AJ was technically the new singer of the band, and he was collaborating with you.
Yeah, because I mean, he wrote like a majority of the top line of that song, and they were just like, come down here and sing this. I was like, okay. That was my job.
Yeah. You wanted to add something, Kris?
I was just saying it's pretty cool how much they've worked together, but they haven't even met each other yet. so when they meet each other, it's gonna be like, "Yo, bro, what's up?"
Well, that's gonna be like the 21st century rock and roll story. Like, it's not like, oh, we met at a hardcore show at CBGB's back in the day. It's like we fucking met over Zoom, man. That's how this band started. Right. Like, watch. There's gonna be an online like Zoom CBGB sort of thing, and and I could see that being sort of like a new thing. It sounds sad at first, but I think we could work something out with it.
Yeah, like maybe pre-COVID, it's like, what are you talking about? And then, like, now it's like, oh, I understand. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, I just hope that a DIY online venue goes beyond just shitty internet. I just hope it goes beyond that.
You'd hope.
Yeah.
I agree.
Now, being that your music has experimented a little bit and changed styles over time, do you feel that trying new things as a band is always just part of the songwriting process? You never really have like a preconceived idea or anything like that? You just like to roll the dice and see what comes best? Is that like part of the songwriting process?
Absolutely. I mean, Kris, you can expand upon this because you've been writing with Dear Desolate longer than I have, but all the bands that I've toured with and have been in over the more recent years, I've just I was their guitar player because this is my first time being a vocalist in a band, and they were already established and they weren't writing new material, and it was just like I got hired to play. So this is like my first time actually sitting down and writing with multiple people, and it's been great for me so far. I love it because I've never had this before. It's always just been me, working at my computer alone. So I like getting different opinions. But I'm sure Kris can explain to you more about the Desolate.
I think Jimmy's a great addition solely because he can actually record himself. He's the first vocalist that we've ever had that has his own home studio. So any ideas that we have, we can throw it to him, and then he can put something on top of it himself without, having to leave his home or going to the studio. I mean, obviously, that's all for pre-pro stuff, and we'll go. Kyle Odell's our producer in Nashville. He did live 10 minutes from me prior to moving, but we'll take all of our pre-pro and all of our ideas and we'll bounce it to each other, on computers, or just from a file back and forth, and add things. And then when we get into the studio, that's where it gets really dissected and broken down. It's like, hey, do we really need this part? Or maybe this part doesn't sound right. Let's kind of write something else while we're all together. So I think you're right. The 21st century has just completely changed the way we write music, because it used to be we were all in the same room bouncing ideas off of each other. And now it's like, here's what I have. What do you guys think of it, and what can you add?
Yeah. And a lot of people, especially, in the older generation, they like to kind of criticize that. And within good reason, like, oh, it's not organic enough. It doesn't have the traditional, feeling of four guys in the garage, but like, there are bands nowadays where like one member is in Australia and the other one's in New York and the other one's in like Sweden. So like I
Yeah.
think in the end this technology allows people to kind of find bandmates with either like-minded ideas, or maybe different ideas that they want to merge together. I think it's easier to find musicians now. It's easier to collaborate, and if God forbid somebody has to mispractice for whatever reason, it doesn't interfere with the whole performance. I think, and isolation is also a great fuel for creativity. So
Yeah. Yeah. Definitely.
yeah. Kris, as a drummer, I like asking drummers this question because, the famous saying, and no 21st century technology can fix this, famous saying, your drummer sucks, your band sucks. So, in order to hear the music, or in order to come up with your parts, do you prefer to have the music before you lay down the rhythm and the beat and everything like that? Or do you sometimes have a whole drum pattern written down and then maybe the band can write over that?
I mean, typically I'm not I'm not the first person to write. So usually the guitarists will bring something to the table and they have shitty drums written on top of them. So then I have to go back and like, it's like because I don't do the programming myself. I'm like, I'm I'm not good at that. I'm like more of, hey, let me show you what I want to play kind of guy, or let me play it and you record it. So no, usually the guitarists send me stuff. I mean, Jeffy's really good about it. Jeffy's probably the only person in the band that really gets me, and he's the bassist. So, we stick tight together, the drum and bass section, rhythm section. And like, he knows what I would play in certain parts. He's like, this is they call me K. So it's like, cause my name starts with a K, but he's like, this is a K section. Like, this is what K would play right here. And then usually Jeffy's pretty spot on with my drum parts, but the rest of the guys, it just sounds like, you're throwing a drum set down a flight of stairs. So it's like, and Jimmy knows what I'm talking about. I'm like, what is this? What is this? Like,
that's a squid special.
Yeah. It's like, they sound great, but they sound like, it's like, who's playing this? Like a deaf person, no, yeah. If it's deaf people.
Well, what's funny is I interviewed Dirk, who plays with Megadeth and Soilwork and so many other bands, and I was like, honest, like, we're not talking shit right now, but when somebody gives you like the pre-programmed drums or just gives you music without the drums, how off time is it sometimes? I would say 9 times out of 10, it's got to be so off time.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah. It's very comical to me because I've been playing drums for, I'm 30 yesterday, so
happy belated birthday.
Thanks. 17 years now, so it's like it's second nature to me, but for these guys that play guitar, it's like rocket science or something. What I mean?
Yeah. And now as for you, Jimmy, because being a guitar player, moving to a vocalist, and I've always noticed that like great frontmen never start off as frontmen or never start off as singers. They usually get forced into it. Like Matt Shadows from Avenged Sevenfold apparently said that he never wanted to be a singer. Who would have thought that Dave Grohl would be the frontman that he was when he was drumming for Nirvana? So but is there maybe a similar form of expression, or maybe a form of emotional energy, or even creativity that you channel into as a vocalist as you do as a guitar player?
I mean, I've always liked the thought of stepping away from the guitars for while I'm on stage. And like I said, the few bands that I toured with, as I was like the hired gun. So like no one really knew who I was. I was just kind of like that guitar player on stage right that just, and don't get me wrong, it was great, but I just, ever since I was really young, I always kind of had that like presence of like, I kind of want to be in the, not like ego wise, but I just always felt like I could really attribute, I'm trying to like figure out the best way to describe it. I don't know. I just always have like had a strong passion for being a front man, and I never was granted the opportunity until now. It just kind of happened. So I'm like, okay, let's give this a shot.
Yeah, and you had to step into a lot of new uncharted territory as a result of it.
Yes.
So who would have thought? There's many things where you have a vision on how you want to do something, and it ends up being completely different and ends up working out for the best.
Yep.
And, it's one thing to be able to sing and scream and, have the technique, but then there's also lyrics that you have to put into play. So when it comes to writing lyrics, is it easier to write lyrics when you already have music in front of you, or do you sometimes always write lyrics and maybe that could help influence the music itself?
I try to write lyrics like as they pop into my head, and most of the time it's like 3 a.m. when I'm laying in bed. Like I'll just be sitting there because I'm an insomniac. I can never sleep, and like this line or something will just pop in my head. So I'll always like try to get my phone out, type it down, write it down or whatever. Um, but if I always when I write vocals, I have the song in front of me, and I have my keyboard right here, my piano, and I'll try and type out a melody first, kind of like get a rough idea of a melody, and then once I kind of get that, I'll just kind of start murmuring and just kind of blabbing on with that melody, and sometimes like a word will come out. And I'll be like, oh, that's kind of cool. And then I'll like kind of go based off of that word. That's if like I don't have an idea of like what the topic I'm going to be singing about, or I'm starting from like grounds, zero.
Yeah. And nothing could be more heartbreaking than having the best lyrics ever, but then they're always like one syllable over or under the whole arrangement.
It's something that I'm still working on because, like I said, this is very new to me still. So it's trying to figure out the best way to get the best results. It's trial and error. It's just practice. I always, when I'm sitting at home, I'm constantly opening up files that I've opened up like 5 other times before. I'm like, all right, God, I need to write something for this. And then like, I'll work on it for like a half hour, and then I'm still at the same place. I'll just close it again. It's like, all right, I'll try again tomorrow.
Yeah, artistic rage. I have 2 more
Mm-hmm.
questions for you. This is kind of a cliche question. I know some bands don't really like this question, but I'm always very curious because being that Dear Desolate does have, multiple styles and multiple sounds, is it fair to say that, all of you do kind of have like different inspirations that you take sources from? Like, who is like your drumming inspiration? Who is your inspiration as a front man? Do you kind of like have one person that, I don't want to say that you're trying to emulate, but do you have like one person who definitely is your sort of like a driving force in a way, or do you take inspiration from multiple sources in a way?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, all of us come from such different backgrounds. I come from, I started off like, I like more of like the rock kind of, I'm trying to think of examples. Like I grew up on Avenged Sevenfold and System of a Down and that kind of thing. And then I grew older. That was kind of like my gateway into like the heavier stuff. But recently, I've been heavily been influenced by a lot of like pop music. Post Malone is a big one for me, and I try to incorporate that into our style of in Dear Desolate, and kind of it's like the best of both worlds. You know what I mean? Trying to use like some techniques that normally wouldn't be used in rock and roll, and even with like production, when I'm just writing a song that I'm gonna like send to the guys, like I'll use a lot of pop influence like techniques and kind of like weird things that you wouldn't normally think about, and they every time that I do it, they've told me time and time again that it's really refreshing because it's something completely new, and they're not used to having that creativity, that side of a creativity that it just doesn't come naturally to them, if that makes any sense.
Definitely. How about you, Kris? Who's like, was there kind of like an artist that made you pick up a pair of drumsticks, or somebody who you discovered later that like maybe influenced your style?
Yeah, for sure. I mean, Aaron Gillespie from Under Oath was like probably my number one influence growing up. I mean, Under Oath was my favorite band. I mean, I grew up listening to like, Avenged Sevenfold and stuff as well, Slipknot. But Joey Jordison never really like stuck out to me as a drummer, right? And when I watched my first concert ever was, I think it was Under Oath wasn't even headlining. I think it was The Bled was headlining. So it was this local opener, I think called Beta or something, and then it was it was Thrice headliner. So it was The Bled, Under Oath, and then Thrice. And yeah, I mean, dude, pretty awesome first show to ever go to being young. And when I saw Aaron Gillespie play drums, I mean, it was just like the power and like the intensity that he played with. I was like, I want to play like that. I want to look like that when I play on stage. I want to sound like that. It's like kind of like a vocalist, right? Like the vocalist is like constantly heard, center of attention. in your brain, whether you know it or not. You know, like the melody is like a lead guitar, you know, and you just follow it. So
Yeah, and drummers who could sing and play is a talent like that is borderline subhuman. Whether it's Aaron from Under Oath, Brandon from Atreyu, Bron Daler of Mastodon, like there
yeah,
are drummers who sing and play, and it is, I don't know how they do it. Because you're focusing on a
it's mind
rhythm.
blowing, man.
Yeah, you're focusing on a rhythm and a melody at the same time.
It's like doing one of these,
Oh,
patting your head,
Especially
cry.
well, and like talking and hitting a pitch at the same time. So like you're doing this, but also like moving your feet, and then like using your vocals, and it's just like it's. I mean, it's an impressive feat for sure.
yeah, and
Super
so you have to remain on key. You have to remain on time. You have to, like, I feel like every pressuring element of playing music live is just incorporated on musicians like that. If you could do that,
Yeah.
that's talent right there. Just impressive, and you're subhuman.
Yeah, no, totally agree.
Yeah. So before we go, I want to thank you so much for your time today. Just the final question: is there just anything else with Dear Desolate that you would like to promote? Obviously, thanks to a certain bullshit virus that shall not be named on my outlet, shows aren't happening at the moment. But when all this is behind us, we'll be seeing Dear Desolate quite on the road a bit, right?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, we've got a lot of the guys work in the music industry, so and then we've got some emails coming in after Voyager's release, so you'll definitely be seeing us on the road.
Awesome. Well,
Yeah.
thank you all so much, and congratulations on a great single. And I look forward to hearing more. Everybody, we are here with Dear Desolate. Check out their new single Voyager, featuring AJ of Fire from the Gods. This is Alex from Heavy New York, and we will see you next time.